Hello, hi, my name's Ollie and I am going to talk today about Closet Case, which is by Robert Rodi. I'm sorry, on previous one I introduced this as Robert Rodi. I didn't mean to. His name is Robert Rodi. This book is called Closet Case, which was first published in 1994. You might find it harder to get hold of. You can see that this particular copy is very old, and that's because it was probably one of the first books which I read when I was growing up and I had just come out. So I very much identified with this book because a lot of the themes was about the fact that the main character, the lovely Lionel, is coming to terms with the fact that he is a gay man in a working industry which isn't very accepting of that. Because it isn't in the 90s, and at that time there were kind of different views about lifestyle choices in terms of if you were a homosexual or lesbian, then you were considered something quite other and possibly quite dangerous or dirty or wrong, or just basically not straight and right. So this is a kind of conical lens looking at some quite big issues in that sense. I really enjoyed reading this book because it had such a humorous take on the situation, as Lionel desperately does not want anybody to know about his sexuality, and he is determined to keep himself in the closet. He has a lot of guilt in the way he feels. He is clearly very infatuated with the idea of being with other men, and he goes out during the evenings and picks up guys, or he calls up different phone lines, which I don't even know if that still exists anymore. 1-900-BOYS and then toys with a Z, where he can kind of spend the night dialing these numbers and listening to the different scenarios playing. In that sense, it's quite sad and alone, and all he wants really is to be loved and be accepted, but it doesn't necessarily happen. And he also wants to progress in his career. Lionel starts making friends with this young woman called Tracy. It's coming up to a dinner event, and he and her go out on their first kind of date. And that is, in essence, the moment which I chose to use as starting point for the image which I made. So Tracy is very much an innocent. She doesn't know anything about Lionel's true feelings, whereas Lionel is very much aware of the fact that he is taking this girl out with the intention of sleeping with her, of then living a life as a heterosexual man with this woman, and he's just about thinking that he can get away with it. However, it comes to the crunch and he realizes that he can't. And that's because in the back of his mind he has this image of this other man. His name is Emil, and he is a political activist who's from Romania, and he's trying to help Transylvania become independent of Romania. And he meets him outside with his protest boards and stuff, and he's a big burly man with a dark beard and piercing eyes, and he has him running in the back of his head, and that stops him from progressing his relationship with Tracy. And poor unfortunate circumstances mean that he ends up actually on the floor with a man half naked on top of him in a bathroom during this dinner evening when that guy is supposed to be out doing a speech. I mean, the situation is hilarious, and that moment when he's kissing Tracy, he is very much thinking of this other fella in the back of his mind. Triangulation between them is the fact that Lionel is trying to force himself to fantasize and think of Tracy. However, his sexual deviances inside him is preventing him, and that's why he has a strap across his face, preventing him from engaging with her. You also see that her hand is trying to touch him, and that's creating this physical reaction into him, and it makes him very alert and aware of her being there. She is blinded because she does not realise that he is in fact gay, because he is straight acting. And behind and above them is the image of Emil, which he is fantasizing of, and it's also got reference to the Romanian flag, and that's why that's all situated in the back. The rest of the story is focusing on Lionel trying to progress with his career, There's also some sub-characters in there such as Yolanda, who ends up forming a relationship with Emil, and they bond over their love of science fiction. It's actually quite beautiful, and it made me think about science fiction in a different way. I have always enjoyed science fiction and the parallels that science fiction has to real life. So she describes science fiction as a way in which our culture can create a self-fulfilling prophecy of how we should behave, our better selves or our better lives. So it picks up on political themes loosely and weaves them into this very comical dialogue. I really enjoyed Yolanda as a character, and I enjoyed their morals which they have behind them. She unfortunately has a relationship with the antagonist, who is Bob. Bob is kind of the polar opposite to Lionel in the fact that Bob is a heterosexual man, but he's also an incredible metrosexual in the fact that he is very comfortable and confident with his sexuality. He enjoys the finer things in life. He enjoys making himself look presentable and taking care of his skin, and dresses to a kind of high fashion way, something considered quite urban, and that is the polar end opposite of Lionel, who is desperately uncomfortable with his sexuality, doesn't want anybody to know about him, is terrified of acting outside of any sense of the normal heterosexual way of being, and so represses himself in the way that he behaves, whereas Bob is quite flamboyant, quite happy in the way that he behaves. He actually ends up going on this all-male bonding course, which ignites the kind of primal animal within him and makes him a bit of a mess, and has explosive consequences in terms of he is enraged with jealousy because he thinks that Lionel has stolen Yolanda to go away on a secret weekend away to have an affair. The reality is that Lionel's trying to make a good impression with his bosses by going on a weekend vacation with some potential other partners for their kind of marketing relationship, and he uses Yolanda as a kind of buffer, and she is happy to go along because she kind of wants to escape Bob for a little bit because she is having an affair with Emil, and she just needs to get her head together. So she goes along under the pretense that she's in fact Lionel's girlfriend. It all ends in a disastrous situation where Bob is basically threatening everybody with a giant spear, and everyone's terrified for their lives, and it's all very messy. But as a nice result at the end, Lionel manages to find a flame in the form of David, who is one of these marketing dudes' son. And it closes in quite a nice, joyful, happy, fulfilled way in the fact that everyone kind of gets what they wanted. So that is a quick run through on the closet case. It's comical. You will find it harder to get a hold of this one. I hope I've kind of indicated enough bits which make you want to go out and try and find it. That's probably enough from me for today. I hope you enjoyed this. Please contribute to the Facebook group which I've got going on. I've also got an account on Instagram where you can upload images if you're wanting to contribute and do your own kind of fan art, or you've got other artworks about LGBTQIA+ characters that you're interested in. I'm interested in mainly fiction, but if you've got other people that you want to represent, feel free to include them on the group. It's more about sharing, it's more about getting different stories out there that and hopefully people will want to engage in. Yeah, that's probably it. Okay, bye.
Subscribe!